Watching Wall Street this afternoon, stocks careening even lower. A lot of uncertainty right now. This trade war escalating. China, one example here, has matched President Trump's big raise in tariffs. So we wanted to kind of sort through things. It's been a couple of days since we talked to Madeline Summerville, attorney and political analyst. Thanks for joining us again, Madeline.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be back.
So when we last talked to you, it was just a few days ago, and it was the day when President Trump said he was going to sort of lay out all the details, and he had the big board with all the numbers and everything, and we feel like we got some more answers there, although still a lot of uncertainty. So can you set the tariff stage for us? You know, where are we as of noon Central Standard Time here on Friday?
Sure. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come back and talk about this. So I wish I had more details. I wish I had a little bit more of certainty to offer you, but that is part of the plan, I think, here. So with the big board that Trump brought out, he had a certain formula that he and his colleagues worked on that would distribute tariffs not across the board as 10%, but in what they're calling a reciprocal fashion, which experts have decided is not necessarily reciprocal, but simply just means if you trade with us, we'll trade with you. He's actually imposed tariffs in places where there isn't any trade already, and they're across the board and not related to specific industries. So there's a lot going on here, but ultimately, what we're seeing today as a result of this new tariff policy is market crashes. So, and that's not just here in the United States, that's all over the world, because the way that our trade is set up with other countries is built into other countries' infrastructures. And so when we make a big move, that's going to impact everything. Whether the outcome ends up being a positive one or not, we're all kind of in agreement that that's going to impact things in the short term. So the reaction's either going to be from countries, we're going to back down, or they're going to start looking for alternatives other than selling their products to the United States. They'll band together with other countries and look for alternative markets.
And stepping back for just a second, you and I have talked about this issue now for a couple of months, and we always try to find the sort of the balance in these stories, and we will always continue to do that. This one has been really tricky, just as a journalist, and again, trying to just stay as down the middle as I can, as I've looked for supporters of this, and haven't necessarily seen a lot of people coming out in support. Even Republicans are, when they defend the president, seem to say things like, well, he's playing the long game, just wait, maybe there's a strategy here. What are you hearing kind of behind the strategy here? Like, why, when it seems like there's so much pushback and fear and concern that this could really spark a recession?
I'm so glad that you asked that question, because I had the same one, and I have a good friend who works for Turning Point USA, and I call him he's my Scalia to my RBG. So I like to argue with him about things because he teaches me something. And so I actually called him right before I came on to ask him that very question. And so one of the good arguments that he gave me was that that the kind of tariffs that Trump imposed in 2017 worked in the way that he wanted to. So for example, with solar panels in China, Trump decided to slap a large tariff on solar panels, and as a result, people started buying American more, which increased the competition within the solar panel industry, and China just kind of went off and had to figure out another way to compromise for that. But the difference here, right, and that's a good argument, the difference here is that it's not just the solar panels, it's the lumber, it's the all the other elements that would go into building a house or a building, for example, at one time, which is quite similar to the way that the DOGE cuts are being made, right? It makes sense on both sides, and no Democrat can say in good conscience that they don't believe in cutting down the size of the federal government, because it's been done so many times before by Democratic presidents. It's the way that it's being done, right? So if you're looking at it from an overall perspective, right? You're saying, yes, we could make better deals. We can't be stuck with deals that we've done forever in the past. But kind of just as a political analyst, when I look at this, I say, okay, if there's not a lot of careful attention that's being paid to what we're doing here, then perhaps really the goal is messaging and not actually changing the markets.
And you and I talked about this a little bit a couple of days ago in this line that maybe President Trump, and not, we don't know, exactly what he's sort of his strategy is here, but he's riding this line between what he wants to do and sort of his, I think it's fair to say, kind of the ego that you have as a president, no matter who you are, and then also seeing a freight train coming at you and saying, okay, now it's time to jump out of the way. So you see some of that happening as well. And at what point would that tip, and will he ever sort of surrender and throw up the white flag and go, okay, yeah, this is too much. So
I do think that President Trump responds to what people like and what they dislike. I think that's actually the reason why we don't have a federal ban on abortion. I think it's because he was like, no, it's 67% of Americans don't want that, therefore we won't have that. And I think that there's probably the people around him who are helping him make these decisions. It's very likely that they're saying to him, like, you have to hold out. You have to keep holding out, because if we're going to make a change, it's going to hurt for a while. And I think that that's a reasonable argument. The problem is that simply because there's action being taken, right? And that's really what the American people want to see, is action. People want things to change. Doesn't mean that it's a good action or an action for the better. And the more that people just put their trust in an administration without asking for the details, and just saying, you know what, I'm just going to trust that this is going to work out, the less likely you are to stay true to your own values. So I would encourage people to ask for more details, to ask for more information. And even if this isn't your forte, the economy is not my forte, people who have a very good understanding of things should be able to explain it to people in layman's terms, like I needed to.
Well, particularly when, it could affect our pocketbooks, right? Whether it's the lumber or the steel or whatever. And I guess that's kind of my next question is, what is concrete right now? What do we know about? Because we see these headlines like prices on this could go up and avocados this and, steel that. But what do we know for sure? What is certain? Is anything certain, or is it all kind of like, if these countries don't come around in the next week or two, then it could get really bad? Or so are we always kind of living in this state of what if?
Yeah, I think it is a what if state, unfortunately, because I love to be able to give your viewers specifics so that they can understand what to expect. But as you see with the markets, what has happened is response to that uncertainty. Uncertainty in real life corresponds to uncertainty in the markets. So the volatility there is a good signal that we don't have anything set in stone. And we are waiting for countries to back down, because that's the position that they've taken, is you either have to back down and agree, or you've got to walk and not trade with us. In terms of what we can expect weeks, months down the road. This is actually one thing that my friend was not able to defend, which again, not his fault, but it's that there isn't an infrastructure to compensate for the losses that we might have if Japan or China or Vietnam decide to just walk away. Because one of the countries that we didn't focus, that I didn't focus in on a couple days ago, was Vietnam. I didn't realize that there was going to be such a drastic tariff that was placed on them. Again, not proportional in any way. It's just simply a drastic tariff. And so one of the things I said was, but we don't have the infrastructure to be able to make up for, the microchips that we need to be able to buy those things at Best Buy. He was like, yeah, that's a problem. And that's something that we haven't really thought through or worked through. And again, I think that mirrors the Doge cuts, in that, yes, we need to make a change, but I want proof that these things are thought through and worked through.
Yeah, it's so interesting. My last question really is just about that. And, in the presidency, you can look at this and say, well, this is either going to spark a recession and that will be the legacy here. Or what if this is the most genius move ever and everybody comes to the table and, we reset the economy? I don't need you to look into a crystal ball right now, but do you feel like, his legacy, the presidency, the administration is really riding on this right now? I mean, is there anything bigger than this?
think it's really high stakes game that he's playing, which is high risk, high reward. So let me give you an example and play this out a little bit, because I've been trying to play the chess moves in my head. So here's what happens. Let's say we work with Canada, right? And Canada provides the soft lumber that we need to build houses, and we slap a 25% tariff on it. Then Canada has to raise their prices to sell to the United States, because in order for them to make a profit, they need to make sure that they're selling it at a higher rate. So what happens in those types of cases, right? Well, then we start either buying American, or the companies that exist in Canada that are American bound originally come back home. And there are two aspects to that, right? So the first one, right, when they start buying American, the problem inherent there is that there's some infrastructure that's not built up for things like microchips, where we can't make up for that. And then the other piece of it is the amount that they would be gaining, the company that moves back home, by not having to pay those tariffs at all, is that going to outweigh the amount of money that they're going to lose by having to pay workers a living wage in the United States? Because we forget the reason why companies moved out of the United States to begin with. And it was because we have human rights laws, and we don't allow people to just like dump chemicals in the water, or we don't allow people to pay less than a living wage at a good manufacturing job, right? But companies don't have, they're not regulated overseas in the same way that they're regulated here. And sometimes regulations are really, really good, and they protect people. And so the thing that I'm primarily concerned about is having those companies, once they come back, are they going to treat these people who are going to work in these manufacturing jobs in a way that they deserve to be treated as human beings? Because if you're looking at it from the shareholder stock perspective, right, is the amount of money that I'm saving by coming home going to outweigh the amount of money that I'm going to spend to not dump chemicals in the water, and to not and to pay workers a living wage?
Yeah, wow, it's just there's so many layers here. Thank you so much for weighing in on this with your political analyst hat. We're going to ask you to come back next hour and put on your attorney hat and talk us through a couple of other things, including the future of TikTok, which is it's been in the courts, and that's something that's back in the headlines, and then also this other court case right now where a Boston judge is holding an ICE agent in contempt of court. So we'll walk through some of that with you next hour. As always, thank you, and we'll see you shortly, Madeline. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And just for the record, I sincerely hope that no matter what happens, that Donald Trump does well, that the country does well, right? And I think that's one of the things that we can agree on here, no matter what side you're on, is that I hope that it's a positive outcome. So yes.
Thank you for adding that. Yeah, I appreciate that very much. Great. We look forward to chatting with you here very shortly. Grab some lunch and come on back.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Madeline.